Hey, I'm Katarzyna, a Polish 29-year-old living abroad for almost half of my life now. Currently living in Belgium, I'm a marketer by profession and an explorer at heart. Welcome to The Stopover, my podcast about all things related to living abroad. Today's episode is the second part of my interview with Marcin Ciszek. In case you haven't listened to part 1, make sure to check it out before you continue with this episode. Marcin is a finance manager by profession, a polyglot by hobby, and he also happens to be my brother. We talk about his living abroad journey and how it has led him to master 10 languages before turning 30. So brace yourself for lots of actionable tips on how to effectively learn languages. We also share a lot of the experiences we both had during our university years and how they impacted the chain of events that followed in terms of where we are now in both our current locations and language skills. Hope you enjoyed this value-packed episode. You started talking a little bit already about your fluency in Spanish. Can you tell our listeners a bit about the history of your passion for languages? How did this start?
So my language passion is actually this. I don't know. I feel like it has evolved naturally over time. But if there's probably about 2 breakthrough points where I discovered that it was interesting for me at least. So in primary school and like middle school, so I was just basically concentrating on learning English and some German and Russian, just because German was another language that we had in school, and Russian there was just a kind of like it was like an additional class that you could take just for fun, I guess. So yeah, okay, Russian, let's try it. Never got far with it though at that time. And actually, I started taking Russian just like a year before we had moved to the Netherlands. I remember the teacher was very unhappy when she found out that I was moving. My level wasn't good at all, by the way. Only like a few words. Yeah. I don't know.
But like I explained in the first episode that I did, it's funny to look back at these times because you remember it, like the primary school times when you first have get in contact with these foreign languages, you feel like you were the best in class, but then it turns out that in practice it's quite a different story when you actually have to speak to foreigners, right?
Yeah, and Kasia, I remember there's a few vivid moments that I have from primary school and middle school. I remember we had this teacher, and she made us do speeches in English. So it was pretty scary at the time because you could pick any topics you wanted to talk about, right? So, but you had to really talk about it, right? And I don't recall if you could have some written notes in front of you. I believe so because I would have never gotten through it. So what happened is that I remember that there was one in particular. I don't remember, it was called something related to Harry Potter, perhaps, or something related to some global warming or something like that. But I recall that I had written this speech, and there were so many mistakes. And I just remembered because I didn't know how to properly use a dictionary. So like mess up things like I was one in particular. I didn't know what the difference was in between to solve and a solution. So I'll put solution like a verb. It's horrible. Now that I realize what I had done at the time, right? So you would think like you would still be the best in class, but because the level was so basic, you wouldn't really know a lot. So then when you go to another country where you have to communicate 100% in English, you're still 100% lost, and you just kind of have to put yourself in this survival mode and this sponge mode where you start to kind of, taking in all this vocabulary because you realize otherwise you won't survive in this international school where everybody's speaking English, right? Or you won't understand what the teacher is talking about. So it just kind of becomes natural at the time. Actually, I believe it has taken me probably about half a year to a year to become like fully fluent in English. So that first half a year was pretty scary because you don't know it's like kind of fear of the unknown. You don't know what new words you're gonna come across that are going to prohibit you from communicating with your peers or with the teacher, right? So I think with time it became very easy, because it was still a time period where you're young and your brain is still kind of is not like hardwired to learn in any specific way, so you're still kind of absorbing it pretty quick. So I believe that like it's good to start learning before you probably turn 18. Otherwise it becomes a little bit tougher. Just because you don't find the time, or there's just less exposure. So that's like my first real experience with English, but that's not really what I wanted to talk about. The time where I discovered the passion a little bit was where I knew that we were going to a country where it was not English, it was not German, but it was Dutch where we were moving to, right? So we found out like half a year before. So I recall asking my dad to buy me this Dutch grammar book.
I remember this book. It was like an orange one, right?
Yes, it was an orange one. It was in Polish. And I remember that I went to get this book and I started studying it like crazy. So by the time we had actually, gotten to the Netherlands, I could kind of already make a little conversation and understand like in a store or something like that. The book was like super old school. It was maybe from the 80s or 90s. But yeah, it has helped me to get like a grasp of the grammar, some basic vocabulary, I remember it even came like with the cassettes and stuff, so, no, it was really nice. So that was like the first time where I thought like, okay, let's just learn a language just for fun, and I did it. And I was like, we had to take mandatory like 1 hour of Dutch classes, and I was already way ahead of everybody else at that time, I recall. And I remember we had a very I think you and we even had the same teacher at some point.
Yeah.
It was from Aruba, if I'm not
exactly.
if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We had the same Dutch teacher. Yeah.
So that was cool. But after that, my Dutch didn't really take off until like maybe like 6 or 7 years later, which we'll get to later on. And then the other time where I thought like it kind of got reinforced a little bit is that when our parents moved to Italy for 3 years. So if you remember, we were planning to go there for the first time. So I was like, yeah, okay, so might be useful to know some Italian when we go over there. So I just kind of remember I downloaded some software. So I just started to like do some self-learning. And remember when we went there, do you remember that we were in Naples, Kasia, and there was this guy that started to talk to us in Italian when we were waiting for a bus back to where our parents lived from the center of Naples?
I don't remember this, but yeah, it's possible.
He was asking you a question, and we were having a conversation with him.
Yeah, I get this a lot. Like people approach me, and so many places, like random places where I don't even live, like if I'm on holiday, people approach me as if I'm a local and they ask me questions. And
and I don't know. So I was kind of,
I don't know what it is. It just happens all the time. So it's handy to know all these languages for them. Or have you,
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say like, in case people come up to you to ask things about, I don't know, the bus schedule or something, it's good to to know multiple languages or to have you there to respond in any language that might pop up,
Yeah, it's true. And I remember, and that particular moment I remember because he was asking us questions and he went as far as to ask if you were my girlfriend. I was like, no. Es la mia sorella. It was like completely wrong, It was really funny. But yeah, it was a very rudimentary conversation we had with that guy, I remember, but it was very cool because it meant that I could actually apply that knowledge in a very basic communication scenario, and it worked, So I was like, okay, maybe I can do this,
And actually,
so yeah, these were like kind of the two breakthrough moments that I remember.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of moments where people were like walking up to us at certain moments in time, I remember when we both used to live in Maastricht, and we were gonna take a bus or something. I don't know if you remember this, but like this older man approached us. I don't know what he wanted. It was probably also like a random question about the schedule or something. And then he was super impressed with your Dutch level. And then he asked you which Belgian village you were from.
Yes, I remember. I was just going to mention it. Yeah.
He guessed like a specific village that he thought you were from. Based on your accent.
I recall which village he mentioned. He mentioned Woerden, which is right after the Dutch border, close to like Hulpen, which is still South Limburg, but it was like 15 kilometers from where we actually were.
Yeah.
And I told him, it's not even my first language. I'm Polish, dude.
Yeah.
But it's still very nice because it's kind of means that you got to a level where you have an accent, but your level of speaking becomes indistinguishable from a native speaker. This is the kind of this is kind of the level that I want to have in the languages where I communicate day to day. Well, not of the world, but the ones that I'm learning. Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah. But yeah, I recall I was just going to mention the same thing. I didn't remember you were with me at the time, but I do remember the guy. And I do remember, and I even remember which bus stop it was.
Me too. Me too.
That was like 15 years ago or something. Well, maybe 10.
No, that's so long. Anyway.
That's cool.
Yeah. But okay. So something that I think is super interesting to mention to the listeners is your recent, it was a challenge you gave yourself for like 2 years ago when you were turning, 2 years ago? When you were turning 30, you wanted to be fluent or learn 10 languages before you turned 30, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about this challenge? Like, how did you come up with this and why 10,
So let me tell you this. So right now, I guess I could say I probably have about 4 languages that I speak fluently. But I was always interested in basically, having a basic grasp, like to be able to converse in a situation like I mentioned with the Italian or something like that, right? Just to be able to, for example, if somebody put on a radio in that language, I'll be able to listen to it or read a book in that language, right? So I told myself like, okay, I believe I had probably realized this at the age of 28 and a half, that I could probably do like a 10 languages to have a basic understanding, by the time I turned 30. So I kind of, used, apps on the phone, and I used, just basically just various resources to get to that point. And I tried to keep that knowledge fresh. Obviously, it is not an easy, thing to learn 10 languages at the same time, just because you don't have enough time to practice all of them. So naturally, some of them turned out to be, better than others. And, I don't think that maybe in all 10 of them, I'll be able to have like a nice conversation or something like that. But in most of them, yes. And I've actually increased the list from 10 to probably even more since then. So it's, I like to go for, just versatility and be able to like, read anything that I can see from these kind of languages, which is nice because you can surprise, people, it just means that, you're more likely to, to be able to make that, connection with anybody you meet, right? Especially in a place like in Canada, where the majority of the people are going to be either from Europe or somewhere from Asia, even if you can say a sentence in Chinese, you can go like, wow. No matter how basic it is, they kind of very appreciate it a lot, right? So it's a kind of way to make a connection with people as well. If you can speak their language, you actually get to know their culture better too, just because there are things that cannot be expressed in English that they have specific words for as well, right? So like take the Dutch word gezellig, right? So it's like, how do you translate that? This is a word that is I think it only exists in Dutch. It's like kind of cozy, but it's cozy because you're with friends and you're like on a party where you know everybody and you're having fun.
Yeah, I don't know about the party part, but for sure it's about like having fun.
It doesn't have to be a party as long as you're like with people.
Okay, not sure about that.
And you feel like comfortable around them, I guess. No?
But
you can be gezellig by yourself?
Well, yeah, I don't know.
Maybe in COVID times, if you're over Zoom, you could.
Yeah,
I guess
that's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah.
You could be gezellig at work as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like these kind of things, that are just not translatable in a very direct way. This is some kind of connection that you can also create with people. These kind of things. But I just feel like I'm always hungry for knowledge, and this is one of the reasons why I've always found it interesting. Another thing that I do find, especially like if you cluster the languages you're learning from the same family, for example, the Romance languages, right? So I decided, okay, 4 of these I'm gonna make. Like I already knew Spanish at the time, so why don't I just add Italian, French, and Portuguese at the same time, right? Because they're so similar, right? And it actually doesn't get that difficult because some people, I guess, they get scared if they learn a language that are similar to each other. You're gonna get super confused and start putting words from the other language.
Actually.
No.
Yeah, I've had this with German because I had German in high school, and I was pretty good in German actually.
Me too.
at some point. And then once I went to the Netherlands before moving there for university again. So I had one summer that I went back to work, and I had to return to high school for the last final year of high school. And I went into my German class and I used some Dutch vocabulary, and the teacher was really like, that's not German.
Yeah. So, it still happens to me from time to time in Spanish, because the